There's about a million different videos out there about Venice and all the different communities and areas you can live, but these are the ones that people ask us about the most, and then the ones that people kind of end up in most when they're looking to buy or sell in the area, and we help them out. The first, and this is like the one that I think draws a lot of people to the area first and foremost, which is where I am right now, Venice Island. You got the downtown, you've got condo buildings, you've got homes, you've got the beaches, of course, you've got the downtown courts with tennis and pickleball and basketball and all the wonderful things and the beautiful architecture of Venice Island. And it's a vibe, right? And it's like the first time you check it out, you're gonna be like, whoa, this is magical. And that's exactly what we said, literally. That was the first thing, like, whoa, this is like magical. It seems like it's like a fantasy or not real. But that's one of the things that I think a lot of people first see, and it draws their attention. And so for a lot of people, they are curious about it. But I will say this, and there's a few reasons for this. It's not the area most people end up actually moving to. And the reasons are a few. Number one, it's a highly desirable, beautiful area. And so because of that, a lot of people, if they own a home here, they ain't selling it. Like, it's a vibe, you know what I mean? Why would you want to move from this? There are a few reasons you might not want to. And the other reasons I think that people don't end up moving here is, outside of one, there not being a lot of homes available. Two, the homes that are here generally are going to steer a little bit older, so they might need a little bit of work and updating. Also, you're a little bit, depending on the location, overall probably a little bit more risk with hurricanes, just being closer to the water. And then on top of that, the cost is going to be higher, you know, because you're closer to things to do, you're closer to the beaches. That brings up the price, you know, having all the shops and restaurants at your fingertips and being in a very walkable area. There's no HOA fees here. You know, you put all that together, yeah, it makes it pretty desirable. I should say there's no HOA fees if you're not on a condo, townhome, or villa. But like a freestanding home, no HOA. So yeah, it's an area that a lot of people are interested in, but ultimately a lot of people don't end up actually moving to because of all those factors. I'm not saying people don't want to. It's just, it's a little more challenging because of the cost. You know, your insurance is going to go up typically because of being closer to the water. The home price is going to be a little higher, and there's just not a lot out there. But condos, I would say, is a little bit more of a possibility. There's just a lot of people that they don't want to do the condo thing. But if you want to buy a condo on Venice Island, absolutely get a hold of us and we can help you with that. Again, if I didn't mention already, we do have a real estate team here. We've helped a lot of people move to the area, get questions to those answers that are often impossible to find online, save a lot of money, and of course, avoid mistakes in the buying process. Get a hold of us, 941-221-1897 at any time. Call or text us, and we would love to help you too. But yeah, condos are definitely a little bit more of an option. There's a little bit more things available, a little bit more frequently. And, you know, if you want to live a low maintenance lifestyle and, you know, be in a walkable area and be able to get to things quickly, that might be the way to go. And something, you know, if you're looking to do something different, you know, shake things up in your life and try something different, it might be worth something considering, you know? So yeah, there you go. That's Venice Island. I mean, that's definitely one area a lot of people ask about, but a lot of people don't end up moving to just because of all those reasons. And so what they end up doing is a lot of these other ones. So the first is going to be, I'm going to lump these two together just because there's a fair amount of similarities, but there are some pretty big differences. But it's North Venice and Welland Park. So lately we've been having a lot of people we've been helping move to these areas specifically. And a couple, well, really all the ones we're going to talk about yet, going throughout the rest of the video. We're having a lot of action lately with people coming to the area and moving. But on North Venice and Welland Park, the reasons a lot of people are moving to these areas are somewhat similar, but also different. So the reason right now for a lot of people to move to these areas is new construction is just like, it's overall, if you ask me, the better deal right now. A lot of times you can get a better price, especially with all the incentives that you can possibly get, and we can help you save. By the way, if you are looking to move new construction, get a hold of us before you go to the builder, because if you start talking to them and sign up on their form and all that, we can't legally help you anymore. But we've been able to help some people save a lot of money. One person, $90,000 with incentives and price on the home and all that kind of stuff. But there, if you know how to work things right, there are some amazing deals to be had. And it's more advantageous right now, not just for that price, but on top of that, well, like with Welland Park, you're also getting all the new amenities that are coming to the area. Downtown's phase 1 is done. Phase 2 is in the works. So, and again, I know this, we're going to get comments. I know this technically is not Venice. It has a Venice address, all the homes in the area, but technically it was built by Northport. Northport will come pick up your garbage. Northport handles your utilities and your taxes. I understand that, but it's very, very close to Venice. And so it becomes something a lot of people consider. North Venice, Again, a lot of it's like technically Nokomis and Laurel, but they're putting this North Venice name on it now, and it's becoming this new thing. The point is, there's an amazing deal to be had in a lot of these areas, not just in the price point, but because it's a new construction home. Number one, a lot of these are a little bit more inland, so your flood risk goes down with storm surge and things like that, typically. Again, there's nuance with that. Get a hold of us and we can help you kind of navigate that some more. But the price point with all the incentives is going to be down, but then on top of that, with the flood risk and the hurricane risk from being inland and from being new construction and being built to the newest codes, not having to worry about a roof for quite a while is going to bring your costs down. You know, your air conditioning, your water heater, all those other little things, those are costs you don't have to worry about for a while. And because everything is new and up to the newest codes, your insurance premiums are going to come down. The only thing that would be going up is your taxes, because of how much prices have went up in the area over the last few years. Especially like if you're going from a home in Venice that you bought in like 2010, 2009, 2000 up to like 18, 19, you know, even 20, early 20, you know, okay, yeah. Now if you buy a new construction home, your taxes are going to go up quite a bit. But if you bought something in the last couple of years, maybe comparable or down. But everything else, you're looking at prices probably coming down. And so those are some of the reasons people are choosing to move to those areas, because you are getting a lower cost of maintaining the home, lower cost of insurance, more peace of mind as far as, you know, impact from hurricanes because of the location, the infrastructure, and the latest codes on the homes. And then on top of that, buying into these new up and coming areas with new things coming. There's a little bit more commercial stuff coming to the North Venice area. Obviously, Wallen Park's got plenty of stuff coming. Like I mentioned, the downtown, the new Costco that was built a couple years ago, actually maybe even just a year ago. But, you know, a lot of new things coming to that area. And then the other upside with like North Venice is it's giving you quicker access to 75 and being further north, which if you want to do more stuff in Sarasota, which has a whole lot more stuff as far as commercial and big box store and getting up to the UTC mall area and all that kind of stuff, it's going to, you know, give you better and quicker access to that. We're still not really losing anything as far as beach access goes. I mean, you can get to Nokomis Beach in like 10 to 15 minutes for most communities in North Venice. So, and the downtown, you know, downtown Venice and Venice Island for that matter. So, I mean, you're not really losing too much by being in that location, and you're getting a lot of other potential benefits. And a lot of people have decided to go that route lately that we've been working with because of those factors. Okay, the next two areas, and we've been dealing with a fair amount of people that have been looking to move these areas lately and helping a few actually move into them. And it's the no HOA area. So we're going from Venice Island with no HOA to some of the higher-ish price HOAs, and that is another fee to, I guess, consider with when you're talking Wallen Park and North Venice. But just to put things in perspective with that really quick, you know, usually those HOA fees are going to get you certain things. Usually a higher price HOA is going to get you more amenities, maybe pickleball, tennis courts, things like that within the community. So those are some things to consider. Again, get a hold of us if, you know, you need help navigating that process as far as like, you know, what is this actually getting me? What are the rules and restrictions and all that kind of stuff? So you can see if it makes sense for you. Because for some people, you know, I'm willing to pay $50 a month to get access to a community pool, or I'm not, you know, or, oh, it'd be nice to also have this, and this, and I'm willing to pay for it, or I'm not. You know, everyone's different. But if you don't want to do the HOA thing, then you're probably going to want to do Venice Gardens or South Venice, or Edgewood's another one that a lot of people don't talk about. Edgewood's a great one, nice location in my opinion, just because a lot of the yards there are a little bit bigger than a lot of what you're typically going to see in South Venice and Venice Gardens. Some of the Venice Gardens ones can get pretty big. I mean, South Venice's are pretty decent sized lots as well, but I would say as a whole, Edgewood's tend to veer a little bit bigger, and you're going to be pretty close to Venice Island. There's a nice park in that area as well. Although South Venice, you're also getting a nice park with getting Shamrock Park. And then Edgewood, you're by the Foxworthy campus, which is a pretty cool park. And Pinebrook Park is pretty nearby as well. And then Venice Gardens gives you actually also pretty good access as far as to getting to Venice Island. A brand new shopping center there with Burlington right on the edge of it. And Marshall's, Bell's, Home Centric, Pineapple Tequila Restaurant, whole bunch of other stuff. Five Guys just went in there recently. They took over where there used to be a place called Urban Taco. And, you know, on top of that with South Venice, you can be looking at having access to like your Walmart and Target a little bit closer. And to put all this in perspective once again, like any of this stuff I'm talking about in this video as far as beaches or Walmart or any of this, Venice is not that hard to get around. You know what I mean? Like 10 to 15 minutes, you can get to most stuff. If it's peak season, if you're getting from one end to the other and there's a lot of traffic, maybe 20 minutes. But as a whole, I would say typically your drives are going to be to get just about anything 15 minutes or less. But to talk about the homes as far as like Edgewood, Venice Gardens, and South Venice, one thing I like about Edgewood is you are going to get some kind of homes that have a little bit more character and charm, kind of like the ones on Venice Island where I am right now. A little bit more funky, some of them too even, but they kind of got that like Spanish style going to them. And there's just a good mix of different style homes, I would say there. And I really do like that area. No one ever really talks about it anywhere on YouTube or anywhere, period, honestly. But it's a really underrated neighborhood in my opinion. The lots there, again, are generally a little bit bigger, and I just really like the vibe and the location of it. It's kind of towards the north end more of Venice. So on that front, great area to consider. The homes there, you're talking about 50s, 60s, 70s on up to maybe like the 90s. As a whole, you know, there's going to be a few outliers, but that's basically what you're looking at. Venice Gardens, you're looking at like 60s, 70s, 80s, a little bit in the 90s and early 2000s, but mainly like in that 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then South Venice is a little bit more of a mixed bag. I would say as a whole, you're looking at like 80s, 90s, 2000s. Again, there's some outliers. You know, there's a few like brand new construction homes being built in both, you know, all three of those areas. And there's a few little outlier pockets throughout Venice as well that are non-HOA with some options like this as well. But those are like three of the big ones that we see a lot of people looking at and interested in and end up moving to. And I think it should be on your radar if you don't want to do the HOA thing, but you want to be in Venice. And one thing to note with those, since you're not paying the HOA, generally, Venice Gardens has a little bit of sidewalks throughout it. But as a whole, a lot of the non-HOA areas, except for Venice Island, you're not going to get sidewalks and you're not going to get streetlights. So those are some things to consider. There might be a few scattered streetlights, but it's not going to really light up the road well. So those are some little details and nuances to consider, because we've had a lot of people say like, no, I definitely don't want an HOA, but I definitely want sidewalks. And we're like, well, you're going to have to make a choice then, because it's probably going to be one or the other. So that's just kind of the way a lot of Florida is, unfortunately. But if you want sidewalks and streetlights, probably gonna have to go the HOA route, or just say, hey, you know what, I'm that passionate about not having an HOA that I'm gonna say, you know what, okay, fine, I don't need a sidewalk and I don't need streetlights. Okay, next thing to consider would be the Goldilocks zone. Perhaps, I don't know, maybe not for you, I don't know, you tell me. And that would be the low price resale HOA communities. So with this, you are getting a resale home like a lot of South Venice, Venice Gardens, and Edgewood, but it would be in a planned community, possibly gated, just depends. And the HOA fee will be lower. So generally with a lower price HOA means you're usually going to get a little bit less amenities, but usually what it'll get you is like some of the bare bones essentials, such as the sidewalks, the streetlights. Probably a little bit less tight on the restrictions, but still keeping an overall nice aesthetic to the neighborhood. A lot of times it'll get you a community pool, not necessarily. Again, like I would say the bare minimum would be like the sidewalks and streetlights, but I would say most are still also going to have a community pool. And then that's like the base level, you know what I mean? Outside of that, you start paying a little bit more, you might get a little more. And with that, we're talking like usually to get just the pool, sidewalk, streetlights, about $100 a month, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, you know, but generally I would say within $25 of that per month will get you that. You can go up a little more in resale as well and get a little bit more if that's something you're looking to do as well. And so one other thing to point out with this, that comes back to like the differences between like Venice Island, Venice Gardens, the new planned communities and all that. Generally like your Welland Park, your North Venice, and then, you know, some of these resale planned communities, since they're planned communities, they have a certain way they want everything to look. As far as the homes, the landscaping potentially, you know, and the kinds of trees that are allowed. And obviously they'll want things to be maintained with the, you know, the grass and things like that. Maybe they don't want commercial vehicles parked overnight in the driveway and things like that. And so those are all kinds of some of the things that you're going to see, but also on top of that, a certain aesthetic with the homes looking very similar from house to house in more of the planned communities. If you don't like that, because we get plenty of comments from people saying they don't like that, or how like, and this isn't the case for all planned communities, but most, a lot of times the homes are going to be closer to each other. And a lot of people also don't like that. So if you want more variation in the homes and maybe a little space in between them, then like Venice Island, South Venice, Venice Gardens, Edgewood would be ones to consider. But there are some outliers with this as far as planned communities where maybe the homes do look a little more different. I would say that's a little less common. And then having a little more distance between the homes is possibly common. It just depends. There's a lot of variety out there. And I'm not giving you any specifics on these lower priced or just any price resale HOA communities, because there's just so many across Venice. Like, for me to just highlight one and then the chances of one being available there are just like, there might be one or two there, homes in that community, and you don't like the way they look, you know what I mean? But there's plenty of them throughout Venice. And again, we can help you with, getting a sense for where it's located, what you need to know about the community as far as the HOA and all that, if you are looking to buy or sell a home in one. And with these, as far as, the homes, the ages on them are generally, for a lot of these, you're talking 90s on newer. I would say a lot, you're talking like early 2000s, late 90s, or newer. And so with that brings, different style and aesthetic to the outside and the interior and things like that. But that can give you a sense for, what the homes are going to look like, and also the age of, what's in the home, as far as, the air conditioning and, the other things to consider, such as the water heater and the roof and all those little details that, as you're doing a home search, are important to consider. So those are some other things to put into consideration with those options. Okay, next areas that people end up getting a hold of us to move to. I'm gonna bundle two together and talk about them together because they intertwine quite a bit. And what I'm talking about here is some different areas that are nearby that aren't technically Venice, or definitely aren't Venice at all, period. But a lot of people end up looking into and considering because they like what Venice is, but they don't like the price point, or they can't get what they want here, or maybe they like being able to come to Venice but don't necessarily need to live here. And then the other thing that I'm bundling with that is going to be new construction on scattered lots, so, and or newer resale homes. So kind of giving, a Goldilocks zone of, for people that maybe don't want the HOA. They want something brand new or new-ish, so there's less headaches. It can bring down your insurance premiums from having a newer home, up to newer building codes and structure and, elevation to help avoid flooding and all the other risks that go with storms, and, just maintenance issues with the home being that's older, older air conditioning and all that kind of stuff. So there's not a lot of that in Venice. There's a little bit, but there's not as much land available anymore in non-planned communities, in like what we call scattered lots without an HOA. So a lot of times that starts pushing people into considering areas like Inglewood. There's a lot of opportunity for that in Inglewood. Definitely Northport. We've helped a lot of people move to Northport and Inglewood that are looking for something like that. And there's some older homes there as well, resale. So, that's another option. And we've actually ended up helping a lot of people with that. But since this video is about Venice, I'm sticking to more of like people that they wanted Venice for certain reasons, but then they end up going to these other areas. And so a lot of those people, they say, you know what, I wanted something a little bit newer. Occasionally we'll get some people that, don't necessarily want something new, and they end up going to Inglewood or Northport for whatever the case may be. But a lot of times it's like what ends up drawing them to those areas is like Inglewood's got their own beaches, and they got a downtown Dearborn Street, a downtown-ish feeling area by the beach, and like, oh cool, I can go access that. And I'm also not too far from Venice if I still want to get to Venice to do all the stuff that I loved about Venice and drew me to that area. And then Northport is like, okay, I can't necessarily get right to the beaches really quick, but I'm willing to drive. I want to be a little more inland anyway because of hurricane risk or whatever. And, with Welland Park's new downtown coming to that area, okay, that's a nice quick thing I can access as well. So, I don't necessarily need to go all the way to Venice. And when I want to go to Venice, I can. So, a lot of people, as they start getting down the process, they start considering these areas. And again, they maybe don't want the HOA. They want something new-ish or brand new. And so these areas provide a lot of those options at a lower cost, just because like Venice, maybe in South Venice area and a few other scattered pockets, there's opportunities to get a brand new home built on a scattered lot. And there's a few newer homes built throughout those different pockets. As I mentioned, there's outliers that you might be able to buy as resale. But a lot of times, just because of how built out a lot of those areas in Venice already are, you're going to end up having to look at some of these areas. So they're definitely ones I think, if you want to go new construction route, you don't want to be in an HOA, or, you just want something new-ish. I'm not saying it's impossible to find in Venice. It is, but it's a little bit harder. So, a lot of times with like Northport and Inglewood, you can bring that cost down quite significantly. You still get a lot of stuff to do, just different stuff. It's a different vibe. You still get pretty quick access to Venice if you want to come to Venice to do the Venice stuff. And you're just going to get more bang for your buck for your home. You're going to get something usually a little bit newer, a little bit more land, a space between. Like in Northport, one big upside of that a lot of people like is, you could buy a home and there could be a vacant lot next to it, or maybe two next to it. And you could maybe buy those if you wanted to, or you just don't buy them and, you know, hope that no one ever does, or if they do, hey, whatever, fine. And there's just generally more space between the homes in a lot of Northport and Inglewood compared to a lot of Venice. You know, again, it depends on the pocket, as I've been talking about, but you know, like when you're comparing it to some of these new construction plan communities in a lot of Venice and like Welland Park, you're not going to get usually as much space between the homes, whereas it's a little bit more standard in Inglewood and in Northport. And as a whole, I wouldn't call, you know, Venice this hustling, bustling area, but it is, I'd say, a little more busy compared to like Inglewood and Northport, especially in the more residential pockets. You know, and in Venice too, for that matter, the residential pockets are, I would say, pretty quiet. But just there's a little bit more action as a whole with Venice, I would say. Obviously, Northport and Inglewood in the winter months are going to get busier just like Venice does. But I would say the difference is a little bit less noticeable or less stark. You know, it's less dramatic. And so you get a little bit more of a quiet vibe in those areas, especially like if you're tucked into like a little like what we call rural suburban neighborhood where there won't be sidewalks, there won't be streetlights, there'll generally be a bigger lot. A lot of times those kinds of communities, yeah, you're going to have a nice quiet area without a whole lot of hustle and bustle and more of almost like a countryish feel. And actually, as you can see, I'm in downtown Venice. There's plenty of cars going past right now. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And this is in September. This is like the quiet season. And so it's not crazy, but there's enough cars going through, you know? But this is also Venice Island, you know? Like if you're talking like living in more like South Venice, traffic would be a little bit lighter. Inglewood, Northport, even lighter. Just to kind of give you a sense for the you know, the scope and scale of how that would go as far as how busy the traffic is and the city as a whole. The next one, and we don't get as many people getting a hold of us about this, but we do get a fair amount. And this one's going to be a very mixed bag, but it's retiree communities, 55 plus communities. And so, again, I can't really highlight just like, oh, yep, this is the one, because they're kind of scattered throughout. You got Brightmoor and Welland Park. There's different like mobile home communities on Venice Island that are 55 plus. Again, if you start extending out into like Northport, there's some there. Inglewood, same thing. There's a few, you know, different like villas and like actual homes, communities throughout Venice as well. Planned, you know, gated communities. So it runs the gamut. We don't get as many people getting a hold of us about those areas. And one thing we actually heard from a lot of people is they actually want to be around a few younger people because it makes them feel young. But then there's some people that, you know, like, no, I want to do the 55 plus community. And I can see the appeal. Like some of the 55 plus mobile home communities seem like it's like, I don't know, like a cool little community, but like, you know, there's like a sense of community of people like getting to know each other, hanging out with each other, taking their golf cart down to have dinner or whatever the case may be. So I can see the appeal to it for sure. And you know, there could be a wide variety as far as HOA fees, lot rent if you're talking like a mobile home and things like that. Generally outside of Brightmoor, that's there's a few newer ones. There's a Del Webb one coming up in Northport, but outside of that, there's not a lot of new construction ones. A lot of them are usually going to be a little bit older, but there are quite a few options. Again, it just depends on how much you're looking to sway away from actual Venice area and being able to line up, you know, the age of the home that you're looking for. That being said, a joke that we've heard a few times before is Sarasota is where your parents go to retire and their parents live in Venice. So, you know, that we've kind of had this reputation, I guess, for being a little bit more of a retiree-centric city to begin with. So, you know, maybe that doing the whole 55 plus thing doesn't feel necessary. Although I will say we've definitely noticed over the last few years, especially with Welland Park coming into the area and the new high school being built there and just in general, like all the areas growing, we've seen more families and things like that coming to the area. So, you know, maybe that's something you definitely makes you want to do it. For sure, I want to do the 55 plus communities, so I know exactly what I'm getting into. And, you know, there's definitely options out there. But again, if you want to go more new route, there's a little less right in Venice proper as far as new construction goes. Then you're talking Northport or like Welland Park. And then the next, and we haven't been getting as many people getting a hold of us about this lately. It's been kind of the ones we've been talking about previously more. And this again is very scattered all over as far as a little bit of Welland Park, a lot of Venice, to some degree Northport and Inglewood, but it would be your townhomes, your condos, your villas. And so I don't know what the reason was, but like around the COVID boom, when all the people were moving down in the area, it seemed like we got a lot more people getting a hold of us about moving to those kinds of units then. for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just because that's what the desire from people was, or kind of the content we were putting out happened to attract those kind of people to move to the area. I don't know, but that just seems to be the way things have worked out. But one thing I think worth considering is if you are coming down here and you want to have that low maintenance lifestyle, that's a really good thing to consider. And finding the right one for you, could satiate all your needs. And what I mean by that is you maybe are used to living in a house and you don't want to get rid of that house type lifestyle, but you want to get rid of a lot of the maintenance involved. Well, you have a couple options with that. Number one, you could maybe buy a house that, has a lot of the maintenance handled, or just hire people to do a lot of the maintenance of the yard and the landscaping or whatever the case may be. On the other side of things, if you just want to not deal with even hiring someone and just know that it's handled and you want that house type feel, two options that you should probably consider would be a villa or a townhome. So if you don't know what a villa is, because it's different in state to state, like some people will call, like up north, well, down here is called a villa, we would call a duplex. And basically, usually what a villa is going to be, it's usually what's called a paired villa. So it's basically one housing unit that's split in half. Left is one person's house, right is another. There's a wall in the middle that separates them. Their garages are separated. The only thing they might share is the driveway. And a lot of times they even get their own driveways. And so a lot of times with villas, there will be a certain level of maintenance included. It just depends. Like the roof and things like that may or may not be covered by your HOA fees. But one of the more common things to have your HOA fees cover would be like your lawn maintenance, the lawn mowing. Sometimes it'll also include like maybe like if you have bushes and trees, they might also maintain that. Same with townhomes. And again, like it's a gray area depending on the unit, whether the exterior maintenance of the actual building and the roof is included. Generally not. But it just depends. If you go the condo route, HOA fees are going to go up, which you might be like, oh, but then I got to pay that every month. But usually it's also going to include more. So it's usually going to include your exterior maintenance for the outside of the building, the roof. You don't have to worry about that. You just got to pay for insurance for the inside. A lot of times it'll also maybe include, your water bill. So like if your water bill was normally going to be about 75 to $100 a month, you're probably figuring about adding about that much into your HOA fees. So you might say, oh, I'm paying another $100 a month, but you're losing your water bill. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a wash, literally a wash because of the water. But it also might include, potentially electricity. That's a little less common. Internet is somewhat common, and cable is somewhat common. So those are some other things to consider. And then also, like the outside, like if you're in a big condo building, there might be a pool included. There might be all the bushes and shrubs, all that, the grass for sure. You're not going to be the one maintaining that. The HOA is going to be maintaining that. And you can live a much more low maintenance lifestyle, and you don't have to worry about taking care of all that stuff. But like I said, we have had less people getting a hold of us about those kinds of areas lately. But, I think if you're looking to go to a low maintenance lifestyle and you want to get in something a little bit lower price, might be one to consider. However, I can't talk about condos and not bring up the, big elephant in the room with all the, condo fees exploding and assessments and things like that. And so those are some things to consider with that. However, on the other side of that, because of all those things exploding, a lot of people, if they can afford to, because a lot of them might end up losing money doing so, but a lot of the prices have gone down as much as they're able to, do so. So that can kind of help make up for some of that. But it's one of those things that definitely makes the condo situation a lot more tricky right now, especially when you're talking about, 3-4 story buildings and things like that get taller and are subject to these new laws as far as making sure, the maintenance on the building is up to a certain code to make sure it's safe. But that's going to really depend, from building to building. Some might have been maintained great and it's not an issue. There's no special assessments, whatever the case may be. And, there's a lot of details that are going to go into that are going to vary greatly from building to building, HOA to HOA, what those fees are, what the assessments may or may not be, and all that kind of stuff. And we could definitely help you with that entire process. We actually know that very well because before we lived in Venice, we lived in Orlando in a condo. So we got a very good sense for how some of the things work a little differently living in a condo. So if that is something you're interested in, or any other kind of home living in Venice, we've helped people buy just about anything you can think of in the entire Venice area, anywhere from Sarasota down to Port Charlotte, Inglewood. Get a hold of us, 941-221-1897. We can help you answer those questions that are impossible to find online, avoid mistakes, and save you a lot of money. And we would love to help you, just like we've helped all these other people. 941-221-1897. Call or text us at any time. We want to hear from you. And if you want to know more about what it is like to live in Venice, Florida, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching, and live breezy.